This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 570 for March 31st, 2019. Coming up on today's show, a polyerotic novel. That's coming up on today's show. Hello everyone, I'm your host Minx, and we have a little bit of erotica for you today. Okay, actually it's an erotic novel, and I don't think we're getting too sexy on our interview with Laura Zielinsky, the author today. More's the pity. Or maybe it's just good marketing that now you have to go and get her book. In terms of conferences, there's some really good ones coming up. Lustyguy and I will be speaking this weekend at It's Complicated OK in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a one-day conference. We're teaching 2 classes, our Beyond Dick Pics on poly online dating, and I think we're teaching the polydrama class. Oops, which one? Yeah, I think that's it. And here's some information about a new Soly Poly Unconference coming up in May.
Have you heard?
No, what?
There's a Soly Polyamory Unconference coming up in San Francisco, California in May 2019. You can use the hashtag SoPoCo2019 to find it on Facebook.
What's going to happen during this conference?
No, it's an unconference.
Wait, what's an unconference?
It's less formal than a conference and it's led by the attendees.
Well, why not just have a regular conference?
Because unconferences are especially good for peer-to-peer learning, collaboration, creativity, and increased engagement because participants provide the themes.
What kind of themes?
Well, some of the amazing sessions held last year include SoPo and neurodiversity, platonic partnering, SoPo for kinksters, and navigating entwined relationships, or as I like to call it, gently uncoupling. We have some great new ideas this year too, including death and solo polyamory, SoPo and parenting, non-normative support systems, and there'll be a POC panel discussion.
Where can I buy tickets?
Search hashtag SoPoCo2019 on Facebook to find the official event page and a link to the Eventbrite.
That's hashtag SoPoCo 2019. Can't wait to see you there.
I love unconferences. They can be a lot of fun when they are well organized, and I really like that the attendees actually come up with the topics and teach the sessions. Really fun. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes at polyweekly.com or on the show notes section of your app, wherever you are listening to this podcast. We have a special treat for you today. We have with us today in the Polyweekly studios for the very first time, the author Laura Zielinsky, who has written a polyerotica book. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, good to be here, Minx.
Since this is your first time on the podcast, share with the audience a little bit about who you are.
I identify as a bisexual woman, and I am married 26 years to a wonderful guy. I actually didn't come out until after I was married. I didn't sort of realize that was my label, and he was very supportive of the whole thing. And so that's me in a nutshell as identifying as a bisexual woman. And then as a poly person, we opened our marriage was just being very supportive of me, finding relationships and forging relationships with women. So that was how. And one of the ways I process everything is by writing. So that's how I ended up here.
How long have you been a fiction writer?
Well, all of my life. Seriously, on my 30th birthday, I took a bunch of my friends to a favorite restaurant of ours, and I stood up in front of them and I said, I am going to be published by the time I am 40. I want all of you to hold me accountable.
Nice. Good idea.
And my very first novel, I actually made both my first two novels came in under the wire, one at age 37 and one at age 39.
Congratulations. How long have you been writing erotica?
I've been putting explicit sex in my stories since 2000, I guess. So a long time. Choosing to go to incorporate erotica, and here I'm going to get all sort of academic on you, English literature major here. Well, not major. My major was in journalism, but I taught English literature for a long time. So there's a difference for me and for a lot of people between erotica and erotic romance. For a long time, I was really more writing erotic romance. Explicit sex on the page, but the romance was the thing. And then erotica is where everything is developing, the relationship is developing through the sexual activity, rather than the sexual activity just being an expression of the love between the people sort of at that moment. It's actually the activity itself is developing nuances in the relationship. So that's how I see that difference. So I've probably been writing erotica about 7 years.
Why did you decide to write this particular book? So the book is called, by the way, we should say,
We Three, with a subtitle, One and One Makes Three. All of my books have been a way to process my own experiential journey. They may be fiction and the characters are not me, but there's elements of the story where it's because I'm processing this aspect of my life or this development in my life and allowing these other characters to sort of play it out. My first two novels were very sort of bisexual women falling in love with each other.
Huzzah.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
It is.
But it kept getting marketed as lesbian fiction, and I really was quite would be much happier if it had been able to be marketed as bisexual fiction. But this was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I guess now. It wasn't a label that was really available for shelving paperback books in Barnes & Noble, for example. But this book, I went from being a swinger and in our open relationship, which I've already mentioned before, to realizing that it wasn't just the sexual activity I was after. It was, I wanted richer relationships and to be able to walk down a street holding a girlfriend's hand or something like that and still have my male loving side identity to be cherished and treasured and present. That's where I started writing this relationship. I have this couple who they're swingers, and they have been the entire time, really.
And they are both cisgendered and heterosexual, or the woman is bisexual?
No, the woman is bisexual. Elena's bisexual. There's a scene in the story, and I don't know if I'll read that particular scene, but there's a scene in the story where Eric, her husband, explains to Jess how he figured this out. And it kind of mirrors something that happened in my own swinging with my husband. She's bisexual, and the journey of not just having casual relationships with the couples that they swap with, and they see them as friends, absolutely, but there's this idea of having someone with you for non-sexual activities is where this book's exploration and its plot develops from.
It sounds a little bit like what Cooper Beckett would call progressive swinging, which is the idea that you still like the swinger lifestyle. You still do want the sex. It's not all about the sex, but it starts with the sex. But there is this thirst for spending time in Netflix and chill and all these things that are, outside of the recreational sex that they would tend to experience at the club. So it's, maybe you're not comfortable calling it poly, or it sounds like probably you are, but that was sort of an intermediate step or a different label that sort of came to mind when you were saying that.
And I would absolutely say that maybe by the end of this book, they haven't discovered the label polyamory, but during the latter half of the story, they are moving through that progressive swinging. They're enjoying just hanging out. They're enjoying just sharing things about their lives, successes and failures and happenstances on the job. And like you said, Netflix and chill is a big, they sit and they watch movies together. And yeah, she came over and they went down into the playroom and they had it. But then they said they were going to go back down again. But then they didn't. They just hung out and they watched a movie and they chatted and they had some wine. And it wasn't that the mood to be intimate left. It was a different kind of intimacy. And they were all sort of exploring what that means through the events in the story.
I love that description. It's just a different kind of intimacy because it is. It takes intimacy to be comfortable just Netflixing and chilling with someone.
I do think you're right. As I'm here in California visiting with my girlfriend, and we were just watching a movie last night, and I fell asleep, but it was just that intimacy of just being able to share in an experience and just sit there together.
I do have to give you grief about one thing, though.
Okay. What is it? I can take it. I've
The
done
book
this
cover?
wrong. Yeah.
3 feet poking out from under a suspicious white duvet.
Well, 6. But
3 pairs of feet. Yes, 3 pairs of feet. 3 feet would be a little weird. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Some people are differently abled. I'm sorry. Please don't get mad. But anyway, It is the bare feet and the white duvet cover that we have all grown to hate over the years.
Yeah. And to some extent, that laughter, that chuckle is sort of a, oh my gosh, this is going to be just a standard playtime kind of story. And that's the mood I want the reader to have as they open the book. And then I want them to go on that emotional journey with Eric, Elena, and Jess and come to the end of the book. And you'll notice the back cover is completely black. I go from playful to serious. And by the end of the story, there is a major shift in tone between the characters. The playtime is still fun, but the emotional resonance that they're all having with each other has become much, much more important. And that's the journey of the story. So yes, I take your criticism, and I did think about that.
I'm wondering if you can give us a little taste. Can you read a little passage from your book?
Sure. Let's start with they've invited Jess to call them to arrange to come over because being at the club, they had run into an issue and that was not a good idea. So have her come to the club, have her come to their house and actually allow her the consent thing, which we can talk about, and give her the reins, so to speak. You get to say when and if and how we start doing this. And so they gave Eric gave Jess his phone number, and Jess called it, but didn't expect Elena to be the one to pick up the phone. And they have a very stilted conversation. She agrees to come over, and where I'm going to start with Elena hanging up from the call. Elena ended the call when Jess did not reply. She bit her lip, trying to interpret Jess's few words and barely audible reactions. She had heard the other woman's breath catch several times, and the stumbles when she was speaking. She had thought the blonde experienced with flirting, since she'd been so easy with Eric, but now she wondered if Jess was too naive to really know what she wanted, despite being clearly swayed by Elena's flirting. It wouldn't be the first time Elena had miscalculated a prospective partner's experience. The shower shut off, pulling Elena from her thoughts. Eric emerged from the master bath into their bedroom, his towel tucked around his waist and his chest hairs still matted and damp. He looked at her, still holding the landline's wireless handset in her hand. She answered his unspoken question with one of her own. "You gave Jess our number?" "She finally called," Eric smiled. "I don't think she thought the number you gave was to the house. She hung up when I started speaking." "Did she call back?" Elena shook her head. "I called the number back." She looked down at the handset again, then up at Eric. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" "She's obviously new at this," Eric agreed. "But we're all just going to have some fun. She agreed to a photo shoot, so that's what we'll do. Elena groaned. I think I just complicated ththings. How? He sat next to her, and she couldn't help but inhale his clean scent and feel it steadier. I told her you'd pick her up at the club, ask for her at the desk. When she suggested she come later, Elena's voice trailed away, and she felt her cheeks warm. I said we'd all come together. Eric laughed. My seductress. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder and kissed her head. You just keep being you, sweetheart. Jess is going to have fun, and I'm pretty sure she's capable of making her own calls to stop, go, or go slow, Elena finished, her voice chorusing with his as they completed their mantra together. As the words faded away, Elena smiled, once more feeling hopeful. Monday can't come soon enough, she added. For Jess either, I'm sure, Eric said again, kissing her temple. She leaned into his chest, resting her palm there, and feeling his steady heartbeat. What should I set up while you're away?
That's really nice. I like that you really get a feel for what it's like to navigate these situations.
Yeah. The rough draft was just me spewing on the page when editing and stuff like that. The detail and what did I want to really convey here, and that navigation, that wondering, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing this the right way? Are we really giving her a choice? Did I push too hard? Did I make a misstep? And all of that unspoken under the text just coming out, it shows their relationship and the level at the moment, at the beginning of the story, that they want to have with Jess is something that's something they both feel is important to get right. That's one thing that I really worked hard to make happen, is that consent is there, safer sex is there, and it's all wrapped up. We want to be considerate and respectful of each other.
Laura Zielinsky, the book is called We Three, and where can we find more about you, and where can we find the book?
You can find it on Amazon. My publisher, though, is Supposed Crimes. If you Google We Three with my last name on Amazon, or if you use the universal link.
We'll put that in the show notes to make it easy for folks on the go. Well, Laura, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for writing some nice, fun polyerotica for us.
Thank you. I really hope everyone enjoys it. And please let me know if you do read it. I love to hear from readers, so I look forward to hearing from anybody who reads it.
And we'll put Laura's email in the show notes so you can send her your feedback, good, bad, or what you want to hear in the next novel. Thanks again, Laura, for joining us today. It's been a delight.
Thanks, Minx. You have a good day.
And thanks again to Laura for joining us for this interview. If you are familiar with other authors of any type of polyfiction, whether it be polyromance or polyerotica, shoot me an email at polyweekly@gmail.com and let me know. We'll add them in the proper category of our recommended reading section at polyweekly.com. That about wraps it up for today's show. If you have questions, comments, or feedback, email polyweekly@gmail.com. And you can either attach an audio comment or just call the listener comment line at 802-505-POLY. If you'd like us in person to teach a class at your event, or you want some relationship coaching, or you know somebody who would be really great to appear on the podcast, email lustyguy@polyweekly.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/polyweekly, Twitter at polyweekly and at cunningminx. And if you want to help us out, but don't have extra cash to donate or become a subscriber, you can help us out by writing us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much for listening, and remember, it's not all about the sex or the erotica.